The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
And welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast. I'm Mandra, and I believe everyone has a story to tell. What's yours?
Deborah Monk, encouraging you to find your creative voice.
Shelley Devlin, inspiring you to find your why.
So more and more writers are using public speaking to spread the word about their books. But how do you prepare, and what makes a public speaker effective? Today on the Writer's Block, we're going to hear from Deb, who is going to share her experience about giving a talk at UMASS Lowell. And Shell, you were just recently on the morning radio show.
I was.
So we're going to get to hear about that.
Awesome.
And just talk about how writers can kind of step into that public speaking arena and use it as a marketing tool. And also some tips and tricks for maybe some of you who aren't as comfortable speaking in front of larger audiences. So let's kick it off with Deb.
Right.
How did this shindig come together?
Yeah, how did this happen?
Well, the funny thing is, both of you want to be speakers, and I've said all along, I don't want to be. I don't want to be.
I know. You go and get a gig.
It's been something I've been planning to put together, but I obviously hadn't. And so then someone reached out to me. UMass Lowell was doing a month-long series on writing, and they had been talking about different authors. And so for the final session, they wanted to have a published author. And one of the people in the group, it was a student of mine.
So it couldn't be us.
Right. Couldn't be us because
we're
actually not published yet. Yep, needed to be Deb.
Yeah, it's my student. They wouldn't have thought of it.
I know.
So she asked me, would I do it? And I thought, this is great. This is exactly what I needed. This is the push that I need to make it happen. I'll absolutely do it.
And your only answer should be yes.
It was, yes.
Right. Perfect.
Fortunately, she didn't give me the specifics because I don't know that the yes would have been as automatic because it was a 2-hour talk. That is a long time. Yes. So, but still, I had already said yes. And so I did pull it together. I'll admit the romantic image I have of when I was younger of being a writer is I was going to be alone in a cabin in the woods, toiling over my typewriter, clicking the keys, triumphantly pulling it from the roller as I typed the end of the next great American novel. Those days are over. So I think if you plan to be a completely introverted writer, that's fine, but you're probably not going to be a successful author. Meaning it's just that is not the way of the world anymore.
Right.
It might be for one or two people. I'm sure it does happen, but overall, if you're a writer, you're going to have to get out there. You have to hit the pavement, hit the podium, as we said. So I had to give this talk.
So what did you do for 2 hours? First of all, what did you have a specific topic? Which of your books and topic, did you focus on? Because
I could probably read my book out loud in 2 hours, so I couldn't. I thought
not exactly.
They wanted.
Not sure that would be the best talk.
No, but so I did. I thought what they wanted. My impression of what they wanted was more about the experience of becoming a writer.
Okay,
and and for me that started. It started way back when I was getting ready to go to college and. Planning to be a writer. That was what I wanted to be. I'd known ever since I was little, that's what I was going to be. And when the guidance counselor said, there's no money in journalism, and that was just, it completely popped that dream. And I got a marketing degree and then ended up from that getting a little bit into the marketing world. And then my mother coming to me one day and saying, what do you really want to be? And I said, I still want to be a writer. And then from that, falling into ballroom dancing. So my writing journey has kind of taken this meandering course of.
And I think that's important when you're doing that in front of an audience. You need to show a little failure to success almost thing, because then that connects, especially they were students, right?
No, only one person.
Only one person.
Yeah, the rest I didn't know.
So
I ended up doing kind of the journey of becoming a writer.
Okay.
So that was what my 2-hour talk was. I thought it was important. 2 hours is a long time.
Right.
So I made sure that, do you want to talk about the presentation part or the prep talk? The prepping part.
I think both. Let's start with the
want
prep.
The whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the prep was what I mistakenly did was I had 2 handmade books that I was still working on and I wanted them done. So for the 2 weeks before the talk, I was working probably 16 hours a day getting these 2 books ready. But I was percolating as well. And so then 3 days before
So you were not working on your talk.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, got it.
She went with
Just
the
to be
cram.
clear.
The cram
I
for
used
the
the
exam.
distraction. And I also used it as my deadline of, okay, I've been trying to get these books ready. Now I will get them ready. And so I did that. But then the 3 days before the talk, it's like, okay, all right, shit, now I really have to buckle down. But I had been percolating. So I did kind of have a general sense of what I was going to do. So I started with, I just wrote out the journey in roughly 10 pages that I typed out. And that seemed to be what I thought would be about 2 hours once I put in all my other things. So, but you can't just have 10 pages of notes. You can't stand up there at the podium and just read. So then I took the 10 pages and I cut it down to 3. And then from the 3, like I would just have a sentence or 2 about the topic of, when I was little, my grandmother took me to the library and I wanted
bullet points, basically.
Yeah. And I highlighted a line from each of the mini paragraphs so that I would know, okay, if I'm here, I'm telling this, and then I could glance back. And I was actually pretty proud of myself. During the talk, I only had to go back to my papers, which were on a podium, but I kind of most of the time had stepped beside it. I would just kind of casually walk back just to make sure I was still on track, that I hadn't really skipped things.
Right. But the reason you could do that was because you had rehearsed it. By writing it all out in the 10 pages was a rehearsal.
That was a rehearsal. And then cutting it down to 3 was another rehearsal. And then, highlighting.
Then you could go to either note cards or highlighting where there's just bullet points.
Yep.
Because now you're on your 3rd kind of go through. So now you don't have to read from the script. You're going to be able to make it a little more natural.
Right.
Right? And do it as if you're speaking and not as if you're reading.
And you're in front of people, so it was important for you to not stand directly behind that podium to kind of float on the
Well,
the
they wouldn't be
stage
able
that
to
you
see
were
your
on.
mermaid pants. So.
Right.
Correct.
Flowing
Her
back and
tail.
forth.
Her tail.
I did have I had my hot pink blouse with these long drapes.
You had your wings.
I had my
You
wings.
did.
I
You did.
I didn't realize that.
Oh,
You
gosh.
definitely want to wear something that makes you feel comfortable. And I brought heels because as a dancer, as a professional dancer,
you would wear your heels.
Right. And so I knew I was going to be lugging in a lot of stuff and I didn't know how far we'd be walking. So I was in flats, but I brought the heels because I knew that kind of puts me up. That tells my body, okay, it's time. You're performing now.
Yes. Interesting.
Yes. So that was that. I knew that was, you have to figure out, what do I feel most comfortable in really being looked at?
Right. But allowed to move around.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you on a stage type of thing, or were you on just behind a podium?
Just behind a podium.
Okay.
It was in a big lecture hall.
Aside from the speaking, did you have any slides or pictures or your
Yes, because
samples?
2 hours is a long time to just sit in a chair and stare at somebody who's talking to you. I feel like then you're kind of just giving a lecture, and I much prefer interactive. So what I brought was, I brought video links, and they had a big, huge screen, and I did the book trailer. I showed the book trailer I did.
Yay,
Yes.
Good idea.
And I took a picture of me standing in front of it so Brenda, who was in my book trailer, could see, look, Brenda, you made the big screen.
That's awesome.
So she could see compared to me how big the screen was. So I brought the book trailer. I also brought one of the YouTube videos of me when I was mailing the manuscript to the editor at the post office.
Love it. The dance one.
Where I get out of the car
Yes.
and I walk into the post office and I say, this, I just look like a regular woman, but then I change into my Whitney Houston outfit and I forget which, share
I love it.
my life, da, da, da,
Yes,
that song.
yes,
And
yes.
I deliver my
She
manuscript
dances
into it. Yeah.
into the post office.
Just so you guys know,
I love it.
she's not the only one in our family that has a Whitney Houston outfit.
Oh, that
throwing
does
it out
not
there.
surprise me.
Just throwing that out there.
I also have on my website, my current website, the Dance Shoe Diaries, where I filmed a video of dancing in a graveyard at the point when my stepfather died, which was a completely personal thing for me. But that's where I got the cover from.
Yes.
So I showed that
for the
video
book,
saying, you just never know where your inspiration is going to come from. But when you follow your heart, when you follow your passion, that a lot of magic and good things come out of that. When I did that video, that was just for me to process. My stepfather had just died and my family was going through a lot and we weren't speaking about it. And so my way of expressing it was through this dance. Well, and that's how I ended up with a book cover, which was never a thought process at all. So I showed that video as well. So I thought I had 3 good videos.
So you had some visuals.
Yep.
To kind of take up some of that time and to break up the
It was more to break it up, to break up the momentum of the
Mm-hmm.
talk. And then that morning, one of the things I did at the end of the talk was because the talk was called My Pursuit of Passion. And so one of the things I did at the end of the talk was I said, this is what I've learned from my pursuit of passion. And one of the important things is permission slip, that you need to have a permission slip. Well, I woke up that morning, of course, had the idea, well, in my story, I talked about how my mother gave me permission to get off of the track of, I have this marketing degree from Bentley and I have to work at IBM. And Mom came to me and gave me permission to follow my dream. And so I thought I made up little permission slip magnets.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That is awesome.
And I handed them out and I said, in case you just need that little extra kick of somebody else acknowledging that you have permission. And then I was able to hand it. And so I walked around and handed that out to each person, which also gave me an eye contact, not just with the kind of the crowd.
Right.
But
it was a time to
person.
connect with each person.
Hopefully you had your website and contact information on the magnets.
Deb, everything that I'm going to just continue on so it doesn't feel that
hour that morning, right? Like
yes, but that's a really good idea. I will do that next time.
So we haven't seen it, and you said that you would share it with us. But everything that you're saying now is they have the entire talk. You had videoed it, so because we want to see it.
Just a tape, audio.
Okay, audio.
Well, we want to hear it.
Okay, we want to hear it. But they completely, from what you've said, I've already connected with you, the person. So now I want to listen to what you have to say.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was amazing. You did a great
Now,
job.
some people do suffer from stage fright, which, by the way, I do.
No, you don't.
No, you don't. I don't believe it for a second.
I absolutely
don't either.
100% do, and I can prove it because I created a persona who is not afraid to be on stage. And the persona is Mr. Jonathan.
Yes.
Regular Jonathan, very shy, introverted, would rather not deal with people. Just stick me on a mountain somewhere, and I'll live by myself for the rest of my life, and I'd be fine. Mr. Jonathan.
Are you ever not Mr. Jonathan?
Which I do seem to be Mr. Jonathan more and more.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that.
But
so the stage, that's how you
one
dealt
thing
with
that I had to do to deal with it. I created this persona that was not afraid. So if you're somebody that is an introvert that doesn't feel comfortable getting up on stage, and Deb to a certain degree has done it because we know her as Debby, but her website is deborahmonk.com.
Mm-hmm.
Shameless plug.
Mm-hmm.
So she has created this writing persona. This person does the talking and does the book signings and does all that stuff.
And wears heels.
Wears heels.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. I do that when I'm training people to go on stage for hair shows. Is who do you look up to? Who's your mentor? Pretend to be them. Because it's easier to pretend to be somebody and create a performance than it is to be yourself. Because if you're yourself, you're going to feel all those voices.
Right. It's almost like a character, or we've been on stage and dancing, and you need to take on a character. Whether I'm in a ballet or in like Fosse Jazz, those are different characters, and that's who I become when I'm on stage. And when I do public speaking, it's kind of the same thing.
So, Deb, you are now Deborah Monk.
Well, I'm gonna flip it onto the other side.
Okay.
For the other people who are like me, Jonathan had to create that character. I have the character who does my life. The dancer is really me. The writer is really me. So when I went up on stage, what I was not what I had to do was take off the cape of who I am in regular life and just reveal
Debby.
the truth, right? Which I don't do very often because that's a good question. I'll have to ask my therapist. Note to self: I need a therapist.
That's good. I have a good one in case you need.
I know you do. So for some people, it's really. I think it's. Do you dare take off the cape of who you be going through your life and be the real you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a big part of me that would rather be the way you're talking. It would be a lot easier. Life would be a lot easier. Cue tears. All right, so now Shelley did a radio show.
But wait, there's a couple other while we're on those little tips. You wear heels. One thing that I was told years ago when I was a kid and had to give this presentation in front of the town. It was like a Memorial Day speech thing. And I was nervous as all heck because I was fine dancing on stage, but you didn't have to talk.
Right.
And that was completely different. And someone gave me the advice of adjust something small. And so at the time I wore glasses and I got up to the podium with my paper, my speech, my essay, whatever I had to read. And I took that pause to put my glasses on. And that was just kind of my cue.
Grounding.
Right. Like a little bit of grounding, a little bit of a breath that, okay, now you're ready to start. Right. And so if there's something small that you can do, whether it's a breath or, organize a note or just kind of settle in to your space and then kind of address the people.
I wear pockets. Whenever
you said that. You said that was your comfort zone.
Because when you're standing there,
what are you going to do with your hands?
Right. And I knew I didn't want to. You don't want to look all nervous.
Right.
And I'm very comfortable moving. But I like pockets. I would be really in trouble without pockets.
Yeah. But movement is good. So you're not staying in one place.
But some people might not be comfortable moving. They might be better off staying in place. And
even
even if you're
they have to
behind
maybe use their hands or something.
Or if
Already
you're
sounds
behind-
like a pretty boring speech to me if they're not moving.
Yeah.
But if you're more comfortable, if that feels like a barrier for you, where you feel, okay, that's my safety zone, even behind you could lean forward. You could put your elbows and lean forward as you talk, and then stand back and put them down. So you can still have movement, but you might want to stay behind. But
that might be like your safety base.
If I didn't have pockets, I'd probably stay behind.
Now, did you get the audience involved in any way with like open it up to questions, or because sometimes that kind of mixes up a talk as well?
I did open it up for questions towards the end. There were not a lot of questions.
Yes,
there were a few.
You have to be prepared for that.
Oh yeah, you never know. The questions were kind of random, which is fine. And then someone else did a reading of my work.
Oh, good.
Which was kind of nice. So it was
cool.
It was really fun to hear it. Yeah,
right.
Rather than me be the one.
I wondered when you were talking about the permission slip thing. I wondered if you were going to ask people to write. If it wasn't a magnet, if you were going to ask them to write, like, what would they give themselves permission to do?
Well, it was a blank. It said, I blank, give myself permission to blank.
Right.
So I was just giving them the slip. They would then.
Right. Because if you needed an activity, you could have collected those and read off a few of them.
If they were willing, I guess. Yeah.
Or even have them stand up and read their own if they're feeling
brave enough to
that they just grew a set of wings
That's
and
not
a tail
idea.
from that, right?
Grew a set of wings.
Grew a set of wings and a tail.
Sounds an awful like growing a set of balls, but
never put that in the
That's
same.
what I thought she was going to say. That's what I thought.
That's
you were
what I
gonna
thought
say.
too.
I heard the pause and I was like, okay. All right, Shell, tell us about
in
the radio.
hair world, though,
Yeah.
I have said to all of my bosses, I will not dance because there's a lot of companies that do a lot of dancing, and we call it the dog and pony show when they're trying to sell a product.
They dance?
They dance. They dance while waving hairspray at the hair. It's painful. It's painful.
Yeah.
So I don't ever want to dance in those performances at all. I just want to.
But we do have her dancing on our intro at one point.
Oh, good God.
She was willing.
That was painful. Painful.
Tell us how you got on the radio.
Listen, how I got on the radio is because we interviewed Mike Morin here on our
did,
podcast
yes.
with his book about the Candlepin Bowling and about 50 Shades of Radio Personality,
And Lunch
which
with
is hysterical.
Tony and Stacia was his book. Yeah.
So he actually sent us an email that said he didn't remember my name, but he remembered I was a hairdresser. So that's good that we wear that right on my sleeve, right? And he had a question on his morning show on Frank FM was when women make a major life decision, they consult who? Now, he said it was 15% that said they're hairdresser. I'm pretty sure it's higher than that. So he called me the next day. We did an interview at 5:45 in the morning. I was sitting at my desk overlooking the water.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was so much fun. And it was like, so really, Shelley, tell me this. And I said, yes. Yes.
So what did he ask you?
He said, what do they ask you? I say, they say, should I change my hair color and should I get a divorce? Like, it's just endless what they say. But his last question was hysterical because he said, I really want to know, and you don't have to answer this, he said, but did anybody ever confess to a crime? And he thought that was it. He was being such a guy. He really doesn't know what the salon's all about, but he's going to learn what the salon's about.
He was trying.
And so when I didn't even hesitate, and I said, of course they have. And he's like, whoa, what just happened? And I said, well, it wasn't actually a client. It was a staff member. And yes, it was a felony. And yes, she did possibly drive the car for some ATM robberies, and thought that, on her application, it says, have you ever committed a felony? And she thought she should share that. So I said, we probably should part ways. You probably should get your life in order, my friend, and talk to me later. And 2 days later, Deb, you could have written the scene when the FBI walked through the door of the salon. It was intense. Little earpieces, blue suits,
Wow.
sunglasses, just like you see on TV.
Men in Black.
But it was awesome doing the radio.
Did you prepare for the show at all?
All he said was, again, same thing that we do. Let's not talk about it too much.
Okay.
Because
so you want it to be
improv
spontaneous.
is good, spontaneous. He said, just think of some, this was the question we asked our audiences.
Right.
When women make a life decision, they consult their hairdresser. What are some of the stories? So just make a few bullet points and roll with it. It was 5 to 6 minutes.
Right.
On the radio in the morning.
Big difference from 2 hours.
Big difference from
plus
2 hours.
interactive.
Yes.
Yeah.
That helps.
You
That
were
helps a
just
lot.
voice. You were just voice. And it was interactive with Mike and Lori, his co-host. So it was amazing.
And did you have a chance to talk about your book or just mention your book?
Of course.
Or?
So
She's so
Mike did all of that for me, which
Great.
was amazing. I knew him and I are new BFFs. We're on Facebook. We're connected. He gave a complete, beautiful, shameless plug in the end.
Yeah, he did.
So, hold me accountable, Jonathan, because he said
it's coming soon.
Coming soon as the
Nice.
chair turns
Coming
at your
soon.
local Barnes & Noble. I was like, well, shit, I better get this thing written, right?
and how do I get into Barnes and Noble?
Better meet someone at Barnes and Noble.
But
Quick.
you never know who you're going to meet and how it's going to happen.
Well, that's the that's it.
And
yeah.
now he has, he even said after he finished that, he spoke with Lori and he said, I think we should have Shelley come back. She can be our host, hairdresser advisor
in residence.
And I was
Right.
like, you sign me up for that.
Have
sign
you
me
ever
up for that.
asked your hairdresser any life advice?
No, I don't talk really while I get my hair
She
done.
doesn't talk. She doesn't like to talk.
I don't want them to talk to me either. But then again, we don't have Shelley. Like if we had Shelley, then
Maybe
I would.
we would.
Sometimes
Then we
it's not
would.
a direct question.
I love my hairdresser.
It's
I
just
just
more
don't
like
talk a
throw
lot.
up in the chair when the magic cape goes on. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I try not to answer. I try to be the therapist. So how do you feel about that? I get them
Right.
to answer their own questions.
Well,
I wish there was a way
awesome.
to select, you go in to get a massage, would like talking, would like no talking. And you just
Yes.
make the selector so I don't actually have to say I don't want to talk to you.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll just look up on the board. Would like
Oh,
talking, would
yes.
like no talking.
It's regular
Very
Jonathan
true.
today. He would like no talking.
And it's
Right.
Mr. Jonathan, so he doesn't want you to talk. Only
He
he
wants
will
to
talk.
Oh, that is beautiful.
That was hurtful. It's accurate.
Well,
it's just
ladies,
hurtful.
Good
Yeah.
one.
Congratulations
Fun
on
stuff.
Yeah, speaking engagement and
Check.
being on the radio. That's wonderful. And this is kind of what writers are doing in this day and age to get their books out there.
And we need to do another show on how to get the speaking engagements.
Good. Jot that down. We'll
All right,
do that.
make a note for that.
In the
Absolutely.
meantime,
Yep.
thank you all for listening. Be sure to check out the Writer's Block NH Facebook page and the Writer's Block podcast on your favorite podcast catcher. If you'd like to hear this episode again or share it with a friend, you can head on over to the UnitedPodcastNetwork.tv. That's United Podcast Network.tv. Thank you again for listening, and we hope to inspire and empower you to tell your own story.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.